Thunder cracked the sky as scarlet lightning tore the heavens. Arya stood barefoot on the cold rain-slick stones of the Elderglen altar, her white ceremonial dress clinging to her skin, heavy with betrayal. She was just 19, her eyes wide and trembling. Her father, Alpha Malric, pointed at her with trembling fury and said, "You are no longer of the pack. You carry the blood of a traitor." Gasps echoed through the gathering. Arya cried, "I am your daughter." Her voice broke like fragile glass. The council stood silent. No one defended her. Not even her mother. Rain masked her tears. She reached toward her childhood friend, Kale, but he turned his back. Her wolf mark glowed faintly beneath her collarbone, pulsing red, proof of her birthright, now rejected. The final blow came from the oracle, her voice cold as death. "The spirits have spoken. She is cursed." With a howl that shattered her world, Arya was cast out into the night, the gates of the valley closing behind her with a thunderous finality. Alone, stripped of name and honor, she collapsed to her knees in the mud. Somewhere beyond the hills, a shadow watched her fall, eyes golden, breath still. Arya walked without direction, barefoot through the storm-drenched woods. Each step was pain. Twigs pierced her soles. Her white dress, once a symbol of pride, dragged behind her like a shroud. She clutched it around herself, trembling. Trees blurred past in shadowy arches, whispering like ghosts. Her breath hitched as thunder chased her heartbeat. She whispered, "Why didn't you stop them, Kale?" Her voice was fragile, barely there. A wolf's howl echoed, close and haunting. She paused, chest rising in fear. Her sigil flickered again, responding to something unseen. Her head snapped to the right. Golden eyes blinked between branches, there and then gone. She stumbled forward, slipping down a slope into a clearing. Moonlight pierced the clouds for a brief second. She dropped to her knees and sobbed silently into her arms. Her cries were lost in the wind, but far above her, the golden gaze returned, unmoving, watching. In the heart of the woods, Arya's breathing slowed. She listened. No more thunder, only silence, broken by her own heartbeat. The clearing shimmered faintly, lit from beneath by an unnatural glow. Moss glowed blue near a pond she didn't remember. She approached slowly, afraid. In the reflection, she didn't see herself. She saw the shadowed figure from the ridge. "Who are you?" she whispered. No response. The water shimmered again. This time it was her own face, tired, bruised, and alone. She touched her cheek and found it warm. "You are not cursed," a male voice said from behind her. She spun around, heart hammering, but no one was there. Only mist and trees. Her sigil flared red-hot and vanished just as fast. The pond turned still. Arya's body trembled again. "I'm losing my mind," she muttered. But the forest had already shifted, deeper, stranger, and no longer empty. Arya pressed her back against a tree, breath sharp. Behind her, something stirred. Not animal, not wind. A whisper slithered through the air, calling her name. Arya. Her heart pounded. She wanted to run, but her body froze. From the shadows emerged a creature, wolf-like, but larger, with fur-like shadows and eyes of molten gold. It didn't growl. It bowed. Her knees gave way. The wolf approached slowly, lowering its head. She expected teeth, death. But instead, it pressed its forehead to hers. Her sigil glowed again, not red this time, but white. Warm dot. A memory not hers flooded her mind. A battlefield, a fallen king, a broken vow. Her breath caught. The wolf stepped back, watching. "You're not just a beast," she said softly. It blinked once, then vanished into mist. Arya collapsed, not from fear, but understanding. Something ancient had chosen her. By morning, the storm had passed, but Arya remained sleepless. She sat near the pond, arms wrapped around her legs. Dawn light filtered weakly through the canopy, painting golden strokes on her skin. She stared at her sigil. It no longer hurt. "Why me?" she whispered. No answer. But the air carried a calm certainty now. The path behind her had vanished. Before her, a new one had formed, faintly marked with glowing stones. She stood, body weak, but resolve stronger than ever. "I'll find out," she murmured. Her feet, still bare and bloodied, moved forward, each step steadier than the last. She didn't see the figure watching her from the treetops, cloaked in raven feathers, face hidden, but lips curled in approval. Destiny had stirred. And it had chosen Arya. The forest had shifted. What once felt haunting now felt watchful. Arya walked beneath a canopy, thick with morning mist, her breath clouding in the cool air. Her dress, stained and torn, clung to her form. Yet she stood straighter. She remembered her father's words, the council's silence, Kale's betrayal, but now they felt distant. Every step was a question she no longer feared asking. She came to a ravine, and across it stood a narrow hanging bridge swaying in the breeze. Beneath it, a river roared. Her legs trembled. "You always feared heights," she whispered. But she stepped onto the first plank. It creaked. The wind howled around her, daring her forward. Halfway across she froze. Memories surged, falling from a tree as a child, Kale catching her. "You were brave then," she told herself. "Be brave now." She took another step. And another. She crossed. And when she reached the other side, she didn't cry. She smiled. Just slightly. On the other side, the forest opened into a valley, ringed with old stone ruins. Moss devoured what remained of towers and arches. Arya moved carefully, tracing the carvings along one broken wall. Symbols older than any she knew shimmered faintly. She paused before a stone altar crowned by a circular sigil that pulsed softly with white light. Her fingertips brushed it. A pulse surged through her chest, gentle but firm. The sigil on her skin responded. Her legs gave way, and she fell to her knees. Vision blurred. A memory, not hers, rushed in. A man in royal armor kneeling at the same altar, bleeding, weeping. "Forgive me," he had said. Arya gasped. "Who are you?" she asked aloud. A whisper replied, "You are the echo of a vow long broken." Her hands trembled. She knew now this place had been waiting for her. Not to test her. To awaken her. Night fell fast. Arya lit a torch from a discarded campfire near the ruins. She found shelter beneath a crumbled archway, curling against the cold stone. Her thoughts returned to the wolf, its golden eyes, its bow. It hadn't harmed her. It had honored her. "What are you trying to show me?" she whispered to the darkness. A rustle nearby snapped her to attention. She grabbed a branch. "Who's there?" From the shadows emerged a boy, no older than her, in travel leathers, dirt on his face and arms. "Easy," he said. "Name's Corin. I saw your torch." Arya lowered her branch slightly. He wasn't threatening, but his eyes scanned her like he knew her. "You're the one they cast out," he said softly. Her heart skipped. "You were there?" Corin nodded. "I left after you did?" Silence stretched. 2 exiles, 2 stories. And now, maybe, 1 path. They sat by the fire, sharing silence more than stories. Corin poked at the embers while Arya watched the smoke drift upward. "You knew," she asked. "About what they did?" He nodded. "I knew they feared what you carried, but they feared me too." He pulled back his sleeve, revealing a mark, silver, swirling, not of their tribe. "Mixed blood," he said. "Half mage. My father hid it, but I couldn't." Arya stared. They always feared what they couldn't control. Corin smiled bitterly. "Guess we're both dangerous, huh?" Arya finally laughed, soft and brief, but real. "Then maybe we're exactly what the pack needs." Their eyes met. Fire danced between them, not romantic yet, but charged with promise. Corin said, "Whatever's calling you, I think it's calling me too." Arya looked to the ruins. Then, we follow it. Together. Morning came sharp and clear. Corin and Arya climbed a hill, overlooking the valley. At the top stood a lone broken spire. From its base, they saw a vast expanse beyond, forests giving way to distant cities, veiled in golden mist. Arya inhaled deeply. I've never seen the world beyond the Packlands. Corin smiled. Freedom looks big, huh? She nodded, eyes wide. It looks terrifying. A deep hum began beneath their feet. They turned. The spire's stone pulsed with white light, and their marks glowed in response. Hers at her collarbone, his on his forearm. The light spread, revealing a hidden path etched in ancient stone. The air shifted. Something had opened. Arya said, "This is where it begins." Corin placed his hand on the stone. "Then let's not waste it." They stepped forward, into purpose, into destiny, into the truth that would either break or rebuild everything. The glowing path led Arya and Corin deep into the mountains. As day faded, the air grew colder, harsher. Trees gave way to sharp cliffs and wind-blasted stone. Arya pulled her cloak tighter, the silence between them broken only by the crunch of gravel underfoot. "What if they find us?" Corin asked. Arya looked ahead. "Then we let them see what we've become." Thunder growled in the distance. Atop a ridge, a circle of stones shimmered like memory itself. As they entered, both their sigils burned hot. Visions struck. Arya saw wolves fighting wolves, bloodied snow, a burning crown. Corin staggered beside her, gripping his head. "What is this?" he gasped. "A warning," Arya whispered, falling to one knee. A voice echoed around them. "To choose the throne, you must first survive the truth." The stones blazed, then fell silent. Arya's eyes opened, haunted. Corin's breath shook. Neither spoke, but both understood. Something ancient had marked them for war. They descended into a valley where the wind stilled and silence pressed down. Blackened trees lined the path, charred by ancient fire. Arya paused. This was once sacred ground. Corin knelt, brushing ash from a crumbled totem. Not anymore. As they moved forward, whispers followed. Not words but feelings, rage, betrayal, sorrow. At the valley's heart stood a statue of a king in chains, half buried in scorched earth. Arya approached it with reverence. "He tried to unify the tribes," she murmured. "And they destroyed him for it." The wind rose suddenly. The statue cracked. From its chest poured black smoke that formed a wolf's head, eyes glowing red. "They're watching us," Corin said, backing up. "No," Arya said. "They're warning us." The smoke wolf lunged and passed through her. Pain surged, but she remained standing. The smoke scattered. Arya turned to Corin, her eyes now burning faint white. "The past isn't finished with us." Camp came late and uneasy. Corin carved sigils into the dirt, his hands shaking. "That wasn't magic," he muttered. "It was memory." Arya sat near the fire staring into flames. "Then the past remembers us too." She pulled the map from her satchel, one drawn by hands long dead, symbols changing each time she looked. "Every path shifts," she said, "like it's choosing for us." Corin looked at her, brows furrowed. "What if it leads us somewhere we can't survive?" Arya met his gaze. "Then we don't survive, but we don't run." Silence returned. Owls hooted in the distance. The fire hissed. Then, footsteps. Not theirs. Arya rose, blade in hand. From the trees stepped a woman, tall, armored in black with eyes like flint. "You carry what belongs to the throne," she said. Arya tensed. "And who are you?" The woman smiled coldly. "The one sent to take it back." The woman lunged without warning. Arya blocked with her blade, sparks flaring. Corin shouted, raising a barrier of air that shattered instantly. The woman moved with inhuman speed, strength crackling through her limbs. "Give me the sigil," she snarled. Arya rolled aside, slashing upward, catching metal. The woman barely flinched. "You don't even know what it means," she hissed. Arya stood firm. "Then teach me." They clashed again. Firelight flashed across blades. Corrin flung a burst of wind, knocking her back for a breath. "Run!" he shouted. "No!" Arya cried. "We finish this." She grabbed a pendant from her neck, one she didn't know she had. It pulsed white, and a shockwave burst outward. The woman staggered, snarling. "You're marked," she said. "By him." Then she vanished in smoke. Arya dropped to her knees, panting. Corrin rushed to her. Who was she? Arya looked toward the stars. A ghost of the throne. Dawn came like a blade through the dark, sharp and silver. Arya sat on a boulder, blood on her lip, hands trembling. Corrin tended a cut on his arm. "She was testing us," he said. Arya nodded. "And we weren't ready." The pendant still pulsed faintly, cool against her chest. "This came from the king," she said. "Not the one who ruled. The one who fell." Corrin looked out over the valley below. "The Pax won't welcome us back." Arya stood slowly. "Then we stop asking for welcome. We fight for right." Her voice steadied. "Not revenge, not power, truth." She looked at Corrin. "Do you believe that?" He paused, then nodded. "I believe you." They turned to the east, where sunlight broke over mountains like fire and gold. With blades sheathed and hearts burning, they descended, not as runaways, but as wolves with a purpose sharpened by pain. The journey had grown heavier with each passing day. Arya and Corrin crossed hills and valleys, the weight of their task pressing on them. But something had changed. Whispers in the wind, strange markings in the dirt, signs they couldn't ignore. They came to a ruin, a vast hall buried beneath layers of stone, covered in moss. At its center stood an obelisk, an ancient relic. "This is it," Arya whispered. "The throne's resting place." She approached it, feeling the sigil on her chest throb. "I thought it was a symbol of kingship, a legacy," she said. "But it's more. It's a curse." Corrin stepped beside her. "A curse for power." She nodded. "A throne with no crown is just a trap." As she reached out to touch the stone, the ground trembled. The obelisk cracked, revealing an ornate chamber beneath. A figure stirred within, a king, long dead, his eyes open, staring at them. "You should not have come." The king's voice echoed through the chamber. Arya froze. "We came to take the throne," she said, her voice steady despite the fear. The king's lips curled into a bitter smile. "The throne takes more than you are willing to give." The king's eyes didn't blink as he rose from the stone, his body a shadow of flesh and bone, a figure of ruin yet power. "You wish to claim what has been lost," he spoke slowly. "But know this. Those who take the throne must give all of themselves." Arya stepped back, heart racing. "I've lost everything already." The king's laugh was hollow. "Then, you have yet to understand the price." He raised a hand, and the chamber around them warped, the stone walls stretching and twisting. The air thickened. "Your sigil will burn you from within, child. That is the price of claiming what was never meant for you." The ground cracked beneath her feet, revealing a deep abyss below. "You're lying," Arya said, her voice filled with defiance. But the king's eyes were unyielding. "A throne cannot be claimed with defiance alone, only with sacrifice." Corrin stepped forward, his own sigil flaring. "Then what must we sacrifice?" The king looked past him, eyes cold and distant. "Everything," he said, before the room began to crumble. The ruins trembled, the ceiling above them groaning in protest. Arya held tightly to Corrin's arm as the ground cracked further, a chasm threatening to swallow them. "We have to get out of here," she gasped. But the king's voice echoed once more, louder now, filling the space. "You cannot escape your fate," he said. "I will give you a chance, one choice. Take the throne, or let it fall into ruin, as it always was. Arya looked at Corrin, her heart pounding. She had wanted the throne, the power, the chance to rebuild her world. But now, the weight of the king's words settled like a stone on her chest. Corrin's eyes met hers. "We don't have to take it," he said softly. "We can leave it." Arya's mind raced. Was the throne truly what they sought? Or was it just a mirage, a trap to lead them into darkness? The king's ghostly figure smiled. "You can try to escape," he said, his voice now cold and distant. "But I warn you, nothing escapes the throne, not even you." Arya's heart pounded in her chest, the decision weighing on her. The ruins shook violently, stone crumbling above them. "What are you waiting for?" Corrin shouted. "We can leave this behind." But Arya didn't move. Her fingers traced her sigil once more. The power, the potential, it called to her. She had never wanted this burden, but it was hers now. "I can't just walk away," she whispered. "This is my legacy." Corrin grabbed her by the shoulders, pulling her to face him. "It's not your legacy, it's a curse. We don't have to repeat the mistakes of those who came before us." Arya met his gaze, her heart torn between two worlds. Then with a deep breath, she stepped forward, toward the throne that awaited her. "I'll take it," she said, her voice steady, determined. The ground shook harder, the air growing thick with power. The king's voice echoed once more, this time a warning, "Then be prepared to give everything." Arya approached the throne, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The sigil on her chest burned fiercely, a fire coursing through her veins. As she sat down, the air around her rippled with energy, ancient and untamed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, pain exploded through her, like fire searing her flesh. She gasped, clutching her chest. "Arya!" Corrin cried, but she couldn't respond. The sigil flared brighter. Images flooded her mind. Betrayals, lost kingdoms, broken promises. It was all there. The weight of history. The cost of the throne. She fell to her knees, the power of the throne overwhelming her. "It was never meant for you," the king's voice echoed in her mind. "But it is yours now." Arya opened her eyes, tears streaming down her face. She had taken the throne, but at what cost? She could feel the power coursing through her, but it came with a price she hadn't fully understood. Corrin reached out to her, but the space between them had grown, as if the throne had created an invisible wall. "What have I done?" she whispered, the pain not just in her body but in her soul. The air was thick with power, suffocating and raw. Arya remained on the throne, her hands shaking as the energy coursed through her veins. She could feel the king's presence, lingering like a dark shadow in her mind. The world around her had blurred, the throne, the ruins, the past, all twisted in her vision. "What have I done?" she whispered again, her voice barely audible. The pain had subsided, replaced by something else, something far darker. The throne had given her power, yes, but at a cost she couldn't yet comprehend. Corrin stood just beyond her reach, his eyes filled with worry. "Arya, this isn't you," he said, his voice desperate. "You're not just a tool for this throne. You don't have to carry this weight." Arya looked at him, her eyes wide with confusion and sorrow. "I can feel it. The king, the power, it's all inside me." Her breath quickened. "I can't stop it, Corrin." She rose from the throne, the room spinning around her. "I'm not just fighting for a throne anymore. I'm fighting for my soul." The walls trembled. The ruins groaned. Something ancient and terrible was waking, something that could consume them both. The ground trembled beneath them. Arya gripped her chest, her heart pounding in her ears. "This can't be happening," she gasped. "It's not supposed to be like this." Corrin stepped forward, his hand outstretched. "We can fix this. We can undo it." But Arya shook her head, a tear falling down her cheek. "No, it's too late for that." The king's voice echoed again, this time filling the room like a whispering storm. "You were always meant for this," it said. "You are the heir, the chosen one. The throne cannot be undone. The stone beneath Arya cracked, and from the fissures, black smoke began to rise. Corrin grabbed her arm. Arya, we have to go. We can't let this consume you. But she couldn't move. The sigil on her chest burned brighter. I'm not running anymore, she said, her voice steady. I'm embracing it. All of it. The smoke thickened, swirling around her, turning into a dark figure, an incarnation of the king's spirit. The figure stretched toward her, reaching out, its eyes glowing with malicious intent. Arya's breath caught. It's you. You never left. The spirit grinned, its teeth sharp as daggers. And now you belong to me. The spirit lunged toward Arya, but she stood her ground, eyes blazing with newfound determination. No, she whispered fiercely. I'm not yours. The spirit paused, its form flickering, confused by her defiance. You can't fight me, it hissed. I am the throne. I am the legacy. You cannot escape me. Arya's hands glowed with the power of the sigil, pure light now radiating from her palms. I don't want your legacy, she said, stepping forward. I want my freedom. With a roar, the spirit attacked. But Arya raised her hands, and the light surged forward, meeting the darkness head-on. The clash of power reverberated through the chamber, shaking the very stones beneath them. The spirit howled in pain as the light consumed it. Arya's heart beat faster, but she didn't waver. You won't control me, she said, her voice fierce and unwavering. I'll break the chains. With one final push, the light exploded outward, engulfing the spirit in blinding radiance. The air grew still. The ruins fell silent. When the light faded, the spirit was gone. The throne room was still. Arya stood, breathing heavily, her hands trembling as the power slowly drained from her. The sigil on her chest dimmed to a soft glow, no longer burning with uncontrollable energy. She looked at Corrin, her voice weak. It's over, she whispered. Corrin stepped forward, his eyes filled with relief and admiration. You did it, Arya. You broke free. Arya looked down at the empty throne, the weight of everything still pressing on her. I don't know if I broke free, she said quietly. I think I just made a choice. The ruins around them were quiet, peaceful even, as if the earth itself had exhaled. Now what? Corrin asked, his voice soft. Arya looked around the chamber, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what had happened, and what was still to come. Now, she said slowly, we rebuild. She turned to face the horizon. But not from here, not from this throne. Arya and Corrin stood at the edge of the ruin, looking out over the valley. The air was calm, the world still recovering from the chaos of the past. What now? Corrin asked, his voice hopeful. Arya smiled faintly. Now we find our way, she said. Not as heirs, but as who we were always meant to be. The wind carried the scent of pine, fresh and clean, as if nature itself had forgiven them. The ruins, once a place of power and sorrow, now felt like a distant memory, a chapter closed. Arya turned toward Corrin. No throne, no crown, she said. Just us, and the world we have to shape. Corrin smiled, his eyes bright with understanding. I think that's enough. Together, they walked away from the ruins, side by side, their path now theirs to choose. And as the sun dipped low, casting the valley in golden light, they knew that the real journey had just begun. Weeks had passed since the ruins fell silent. Arya and Corrin had walked far from the remnants of the throne, through valleys and across rivers. Each step, though tiring, felt like an act of freedom. Yet, something lingered in Arya's mind, an unease she couldn't shake. Are we doing the right thing? She asked one evening as they sat by the campfire, her eyes gazing into the flickering flames. Corrin looked at her, his expression thoughtful. The right thing, he repeated. I think we're doing what we can. He smiled faintly. That's all anyone can do. Arya leaned back against a tree, the weight of the world still on her shoulders. It doesn't feel like enough. We walked away from so much. She paused, feeling the flicker of doubt settle deep within her chest. What if it's too late? Corin's gaze softened. The world's never too late, Arya. Not as long as you're willing to keep moving forward. She met his eyes, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Maybe you're right. They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling between them. Somewhere in the distance, the wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of change. The days stretched into weeks, and Arya began to feel a quiet strength building within her. The world was vast, and though the past had tried to bind her, she was no longer defined by it. One morning, as they reached the edge of a village, a woman approached them, a stranger with eyes full of curiosity. I heard rumors, she said, her voice soft yet firm, of a girl who survived the throne's curse, a girl who's more than a bloodline. Arya met her gaze. I'm just trying to find my place. The woman smiled. There's more for you here, if you're willing to fight for it. There's always a place for those who choose their own path. Corin stepped forward, a slight protective edge in his tone. Who are you? The woman gave a short, knowing laugh. I'm someone who's seen many walks of life, young man, and yours is only beginning. With a final glance at Arya, she added, You'll find it. As she disappeared into the village, Arya felt a spark ignite within her. Hope, faint but real. She didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time, it felt like something worth fighting for. Arya and Corin spent days in the village, learning the ways of those who had built a life far from the ruins they had fled. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Every morning, they helped the villagers rebuild, their labor honest and raw. Yet, in the quiet moments, Arya couldn't help but feel a pull. The pull of the throne. It whispered in her mind, like an echo of a time she thought she had left behind. One evening, as she sat alone by the river, Corin approached her. You're still thinking about it, aren't you? He asked softly. Arya didn't answer immediately, just stared at the flowing water. I thought I left it behind, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But it's always there, in the back of my mind. The power, the choice. Corin sat beside her. You don't have to go back, Arya. You don't have to fight anymore if you don't want to. Arya looked at him, a faint sadness in her eyes. Maybe I don't, but sometimes I wonder if we can ever truly escape what we were born to. He took her hand, a silent promise in his touch. No one is born to a single fate. You can shape your future however you choose. Time passed and Arya and Corin found their purpose not in the throne or the power that had once consumed them, but in the lives they touched. The village began to thrive, rebuilt not just by stone and timber, but by the resilience of those who lived there. Arya no longer thought of the throne as the place of power she once sought. Instead, she saw it as a symbol of what had been, and what could never be again. One day, as they stood at the village's edge, watching children play in the fields, Corin spoke quietly. You've given them something that no throne could ever give. Hope. Arya smiled, watching the children run, their laughter filling the air. Hope isn't something you can rule, she said softly. It's something you create. Corin nodded. And you've created it here. For the first time, Arya felt peace, not because of what she had achieved, but because of what she had let go. Arya and Corin stood together on the hill, looking out over the horizon. The world stretched before them, vast and full of possibilities. What will you do now? Corin asked, his voice low. Arya smiled, her heart light for the first time in a long while. No, I walk my own path. I choose what comes next. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with certainty. And whatever happens, I know we'll face it together. Corin's smile was soft, but it held an unwavering strength. Together, he agreed. They stood for a moment in the silence, the weight of everything that had passed finally lifting from their shoulders. The wind swept through the fields, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings. And in that moment, Arya knew that she had finally found what she had been searching for. Not the throne, not power, but the freedom to live her own life, to make her own choices. And that, in the end, was enough. The years passed slowly, and yet so much had changed. Arya and Corin had settled into a life of quiet purpose. The village they helped build now stood as a testament to what could be achieved when people worked together, free from the weight of kings and thrones. Arya stood on the same hill where she had once faced the world with uncertainty. The sun was setting, painting the sky in rich hues of orange and gold. "It's strange," she said softly, watching the light fade. "I once thought the throne would give me everything I needed: power, respect, a place in this world." She paused, feeling the wind in her hair. "But I've learned that true power comes from something else." Corin stood beside her, his presence constant and grounding. "And what is that?" he asked. Arya smiled, the weight of the past finally lifting from her shoulders. "From the choices we make. The ones that come from the heart." She turned to him, her voice steady. "The throne wasn't the answer. I was always meant to choose my own path." As they turned to leave, Arya felt a presence, one she hadn't felt in years. She paused, her heart quickening. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. Corin looked at her with concern. "What's wrong?" Arya's gaze shifted to the horizon, where a lone figure appeared on the path leading into the village. The figure was tall, cloaked in shadow, and yet there was something familiar about them. As they drew closer, the figure revealed their face, and Arya's breath caught. It was Chaol, the same boy who had turned away from her, the one who had once stood by her side. "Chaol," Arya said, her voice barely audible. He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "I've been searching for you," he said softly. "I had to see for myself the path you chose." His gaze met hers, and for the first time in a long while, there was no anger, no resentment. Just understanding. "I was wrong," Chaol said, his voice thick with emotion. "I see now. You were always meant to lead, but not the way they wanted." Arya felt her heart soften. "And you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What are you meant to do now?" Chaol smiled faintly. "I'm meant to walk beside you, if you'll have me." Arya stood before Chaol, her heart heavy with the weight of the years that had passed. She remembered the betrayal, the pain, but now all she could feel was a quiet sorrow. "We were once so close," she said softly. Chaol lowered his head, a shadow of regret crossing his face. "I know. I wish I had understood sooner." The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was healing. "I never wanted to hurt you, Arya," Chaol continued, his voice thick with emotion. "But I was scared of the power you held. I didn't understand what you were becoming." Arya reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You don't need to be scared anymore," she said. "I'm not that person anymore." Chaol looked up at her, his eyes searching hers. "Can we start over?" he asked. "Not as we were, but as we are now." Arya nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "We can start over," she whispered. And for the first time, it felt like the past truly was behind them. The next few weeks were filled with quiet changes. Chaol stayed in the village, helping with the rebuilding, his presence a quiet reminder of the paths they had once walked and the ones they would now create together. Arya found herself taking a place among the people, not as a leader, but as a guide. Corin, ever steadfast, was by her side, supporting her choices. One evening, as they stood by the river, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Arya looked at Corin. "I've made peace with everything," she said softly. "With the throne, with the past. I've learned to live in the present." Corin nodded, his gaze steady. "And what about the future?" Arya smiled, her heart light. "The future is ours to shape." She turned to face him fully. "And I choose this life, with you." Corin took her hand, his voice a quiet promise. Together. The sun had fully set, and the village was bathed in the cool, serene light of the moon. Arya stood at the edge of the village, looking out over the land. She had chosen this life, this future. It wasn't the one she had imagined when she first left the pack, but it was her own. And that was enough. She turned back to the village, her heart full of peace. "This is my path," she whispered. And for the first time in her life she felt whole. Arya looked at Corin, who stood beside her, his hand reaching out. "We've made it this far," he said with a smile. "Now, let's see where it takes us." She took his hand, feeling the warmth and the certainty of the future that awaited them. The world stretched out before them, vast and full of possibility. And as they walked back to the village, side by side, Arya knew that whatever came next, they would face it together.